Hey guys, welcome to another video from Historic Militaria. Wanted to take a look at a fairly interesting helmet that doesn't come up all that often. This is a Spanish M1926, which obviously, as the name implies, is a 1926 design that was designed by the Spanish military from the National Arsenal of Artillery at Trubia. So in 1926, this was standardized as what became known as the con ala, which is with wings, because the earlier example that the Spanish were using, or had sort of quasi-adopted at the time, was actually a version of this same helmet with the same cut, but without this sort of flap, well, metal flap or metal wing as it were. So it was it didn't offer sort of the neck protection that this one did. This one obviously has some pretty close resemblance with the German Stahlhelm from World War I. So it was definitely designed after that. However, when you handle one of these, you'll find that the steel is definitely of an inferior quality, and the thickness and just the overall make is a lot cheaper. They are still very interesting helmets, having seen extensive service with the Spanish military on both sides of the Spanish Civil War from 1936 to 1939. Originally, these were painted in a gray color, sort of a flat gray. This one obviously is a more greenish color, and that leads me to believe that this was refurbished obviously at some point. This paint job is quite thick and not as professional as you would normally see on a Spanish helmet that just came out of the factory. Most of them by 1942 to 1943 had been withdrawn, and they had been refurbished in a green, and also they had a insignia holder placed in the front, and that would have been to hold a Spanish military eagle, a Francoist eagle, which you would have seen in parades and things like that. And most Spanish helmets from 1943 on will have that. You'll see that on a lot of refurbed Civil War helms as well. So this one does not have that. It never got that treatment. However, it was repainted. So this makes me think that it was probably repainted during the Civil War. I've seen a number in various colors. I've seen ones in brown. I've seen various shades of green. This shade of green is also not exactly what you would see on one of the 1942 to 43 refurbed helmets. So it was probably done in the field at a depot level, something like that, not part of the official recall and redo of all the equipment during World War II. This one also has a feature that is seen on the pre-war helmets, pre-Civil War helmets. This is that hollow rivet right here, which is the chin strap rivet. Later ones were replaced with, when they were redone, they were replaced with a solid rivet. So if you see that on a helmet, it's pretty clear that you're looking at one that potentially was not completely refurbished. Also, I do believe that this has a replaced chin strap, probably at the time it was redone. It's a fairly old chin strap, but I don't think that's original to the helmet from 1926 or 1930 or so. However, the liner is a pretty old looking liner in there. And as you can see, that's very, very similar to what would be a standard German pattern with your three separate liner pads, each one split, and then you've got your liner drawstring up in the top of the crown there. This one obviously is in fairly decent shape. It's seen some use, but it is a very interesting evolutionary example of a Spanish helmet that I really think has kind of gotten short shrift in the collecting community. I think a lot of Spanish helmets in general are not as appreciated as they should be. You'll see a lot of Civil War helmets selling for not all that much money, and a lot of people just kind of don't know what they are. They just kind of lump them together. This is, again, a fairly rare one, and if you enjoy collecting helmets, you can still find these for fairly decent money. Not going to break the bank, but also they're not going to be dirt cheap like some of the other countries. If you're looking for one, what you want to look out for is if you see the original gray, you know you're looking at a pre-Civil War example, and those are going to be quite rare. If you see any kind of badge affixed here or like a little, just kind of a bracket or anything, you know that helmet was refurbed in about 1943. And also when you see a green paint job, you know you're looking at definitely one that was refurbed at some point. However, they were refurbed at different times and by different organizations. I don't think there's been a lot of documentation on their use or whatnot. I know they were phased out of regular Spanish military service by the 1950s when the M42 helmet, which was basically a copy of the German World War II Stahlhelm, had taken over. A lot of these were surplused out to America, and apparently a whole bunch in the 1970s were found, you know, probably right around the time that Franco died and the country kind of was going through a reconciliation and selling off a lot of military equipment that was surplused out. They found a whole bunch of these, and a fair amount came to the United States. So that's kind of the last time they were imported into the States. They had trickled in before in the 50s and 60s, as I understand it. So they've been coming over for a while, but not a lot more coming over, and it's a fairly uncommon helmet. So if you find a nice example for a good price and you're a helmet collector, I definitely think you should pick one of these up. Again, this is the Spanish M1926 Con Allah, which is the with wings. So as always, thanks for liking and subscribing and viewing, and we'll be back with more interesting stuff soon. Thanks for watching.